Hey everyone, welcome to another top 10 list. This week's top 10 list is going to be a part one of a two-part series, and it's going to be about the history of the $1 bill. I get asked all the time, have you ever done videos showing where the $1 bill started and shown the progression all the way to nowadays? And I've probably done similar things to that, but we're going to break this one down into a top 10. Now, they're going to go in order, so it's not that one is better than the other, but you get to see the progression that way. The interesting thing is when you go in your pocket right now, the oldest note you're ever going to find is one of these. This is a 1963B. And since this is the style of note that you see today, you see this from 1963 all the way to the most recent run of 2021. But what makes it interesting is if you subtract 100 years from this 1963, well, that brings us to the start of our list, essentially. So let's get started with number 10. Number 10, this is an obsolete banknote. There were thousands upon thousands of different types of obsolete banknotes, and these are what circulated prior to the U.S. government printing money. Every town, every bank had their own money, and it was very difficult to figure out which banks were still good. And this just happens to be one of the notes. I'm not going to go into the history of all the different banks and stuff, but yeah, depending on where you lived, you would probably have obsolete banknotes like this. So that would be number 10. Number 9. The federal government had to step in because of all the confusion with all the different banks and people not knowing what bills were still good. So they came out with a legal tender. A law was passed saying that so much paper money had to be in circulation. That's the legal part of the legal tender. And this was valued at $1. So this came out in 1862. Roughly $100 before this one, roughly 100 years before this one. 1862 $1 legal tender, the first circulated note in our country, set up by the government. So that one is number 9. Number 8. With all of the banks that had printed obsolete money, the government decided, well, maybe they can help with circulation. So what they did is they sent people out to each of the individual banks, and if the bank had enough money to cover everything, they were allowed to put money on deposit with the federal government and be declared a national bank. National banks were given a charter number. They would then put money on deposit with the government, and the government would then print money showing what national bank was actually backing that particular note. So starting in 1862, the first series of national banks came out. They looked like these here. Pretty impressive notes. And then in 1875, I believe, they came out with the series like this that actually had the charter numbers on there. So if you have a national that does not have a charter number, that's considered the original series. And then once you start seeing charter numbers like this here, then that becomes the 1875 series. So you would find nationals like this circulating with the legal tenders, and of course there'd still be the occasional obsolete roaming around. All of this before 1870. So that one is number 8. Number 7. They decided to update the look of the $1 legal tender in 1869, and you got what was the Rainbow Series. They, of course, put Washington on the front, where he's pretty much remained ever since. There's a couple exceptions, I believe, on here. But anyway, this is Columbus sighting land, and the Rainbow Series starts with this blue fading into green. It has the red seal. You get the dark green on the back. Very impressive note. First made available in 1869. Once again, you're talking just a few years past that 1862 point, so obviously these were circulating with all the rest of them. So that one is number 7. Number 6. think I got these in the wrong order. Yep, I do. There we go. Now I got it. Number 6. People were complaining that they didn't trust legal tenders because they weren't backed by anything. So the government decided to print money with silver as the base. So this was the very first $1 silver certificate. Now, a $1 silver certificate seemed kind of redundant because we had $1 silver coins, and the $1 silver coins were 1 ounce of silver. So to have a $1 note seemed, like I said, kind of redundant. So the original silver certificates were a higher denomination, but people enjoyed the fact that they were actually backed by silver. So that's when this came about, the 1886 $1 silver certificate featuring Martha Washington. There's the back of it there. They did, this series does have a lot of the green on the back, and then I want to say in 1891 some of the other denominations went to a different back where there's a lot more white showing, just to make it tougher on counterfeiters. So that is the 1886 $1 bill, number 6. Number 5. The Treasury saw the success with the silver certificates and decided that they were going to put out Treasury notes, not necessarily using silver as a backing mechanism, but by using any type of coin. So the Treasury notes came out. This one is 1891. And you can see this one has more of the white showing. The 1890 version, I want to say, has a similar back to the Martha, where all the ink is green on the back. This leaves a lot of blank space so that you can actually see the fibers and makes it tougher on counterfeiters. The 1891 Treasury note specifically says in coin rather than in silver. So any type of precious metal could have been used to back this. They weren't restricted to just silver. And that is Stanton on there, the best beard on currency. The 1891 $1 Treasury note, that one is number 5. Number 4. One of the coolest series to ever come out, the 1886 Educational Series. The $1 educational note, this was done to bring fine art and education to the rural areas. And apparently they didn't do a good job. Anyway, the fine art aspect of this, if you were out in rural areas, you weren't going to get a chance to go see fine art in museums. So by putting it on our notes, that showed people, what higher society could look like. I guess that's the way to put it. Anyway, it gave people the opportunity to see things like fine art. The problem with these notes is, first and foremost, the amount of ink on them made them very easy to smudge. But secondly, the $5 note also exposed a little bit too much. And when you take people out in the sticks and you show them something they don't get to see very often, well, there's an uproar. So these did not last very long. They were only out until the 1899 series. All of 3 years is all that lasted there. Anyway, this is the $1 silver certificate, the educational note. That is number 4. Number 3. Since they had to remove that educational series, this is the 1899 $1 silver certificate. The 1899 series, considering that it came out as a quick cover-up for the educationals, are a beautiful, beautiful set. You have this Black Eagle. The 2 is the mini porthole, and the 5 is the chief note. So a really impressive set. The 1899 silver certificates. But yeah, the Black Eagle, this replaced the educational. There's the back of that one there. And getting one of these in really nice shape, everything pops. But just to have one of these, it's the last $1 bill to be made in the 1800s. So that's a great reason to have it. That one is number 3. Number 2. They did update the legal tender. The legal tender note, this one is from 1917, and actually this is the same design as the 1869 rainbow, just without the rainbow. In fact, they started doing that back in 1878. So from 1878 all the way to the 1917 series, that is what this note looked like. I always found this note unusual because it is a 1917, meaning it's a 20th century note, yet it still has that 1800s look to it. And that makes sense because the note was originally created in 1869. This one's the sawhorse. You can see the cross on the back looking like two pieces of wood forming a sawhorse, of course. The the 1917 legal tender. And once again, all of these notes would have been found circulating at the same time. And finally, number one this week, this is a 1918 Federal Reserve bank note. Federal Reserve banknotes are different from Federal Reserve notes. A Federal Reserve note, the Federal Reserve guaranteed the note. A Federal Reserve banknote, you can see how FRBN, states that the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago will pay. Okay, so that means that the individual Federal Reserve banks were the ones backing the Federal Reserve banknotes versus a Federal Reserve Bank, which is just the Federal Reserve doing all the banking. This is an individualized backing by each reserve, and it was done to try to replace the national currency. That's why it's done this way. It's done to say national currency to replace the nationals that were there. Didn't quite work out, but very cool eagle on the back there, that flying eagle, and of course George Washington over there. The Federal Reserve notes and the Federal Reserve banknotes of the time were very similar. The Federal Reserve banknotes did use the portrait on the left. The Federal Reserve notes put the portrait in the center, and they did not make a $1 bill on the Federal Reserve notes, just the Federal Reserve banknotes. So that one's number one this week. Now, once again, I want to emphasize that all of the notes you just saw started in 1862, and here is our 1963. Remember, our current notes go from 1963 to 2021 as far as the series goes. And these notes go from 1863 to 1921. So in the same time period, the same amount of time that we've been using this, all of these notes came out and all of these notes were in circulation. So yeah, it's okay to change our notes every once in a while. This is boring. Even if you like the design, this was much more exciting. All right, guys, if you learned anything new, go ahead and hit that like button. If you like what you see and you want to see more, please subscribe. Love reading all your comments. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.